Hold on tight, folks. We're about to take you on a wild ride through the Redditverse. I'm Rowena, your guide on this exhilarating journey, and together, we'll explore stories that'll make you laugh, cry, and question reality. Get ready for the Reddit rabbit hole experience. Today's story comes with multiple update. It was originally posted on the Am I the A-hole subreddit, and it's from user Expensive Pangolin 60, titled Will I be the a-hole for calling off a wedding because my fiancé is extremely frugal? Trigger warnings. Financial abuse, emotional abuse, trauma, financial struggles, neglect, psychological manipulation. I 31F struggle with my fiancé's 32M frugalness and not sure if I want to marry him anymore after a 3-year relationship. Throwaway is my fiancé follows my regular account. I met my fiancé 3 years ago. He came out of an abusive marriage just 2 years before we met. One of her absolute abuses was financial. She bled him dry, made him buy expensive jewelry only to give it away or break it after an argument. Designer shoes, clothes, big house car, Caribbean trips. You name it, she made him pay for it. She also took him to the cleaners in the divorce. However, my fiancé is very well off. He makes far over 6 figures, almost 7. On top of that, he inherited a few millions from his grandfather and his parents gifted him and his siblings also a few cool millions. So yes, the financial abuse was bad, but he does not suffer financially. He has more money than he will ever need. So last year I moved into his house. I do not pay rent, but I split the bills and buy food. I pay for my own clothes and jewelry. I have a good job and I can take care of myself. However, things have been taking a turn for the worse and I feel miserable. His house was empty when I moved in. He had hand-me-down furniture. Maybe 3 forks and 2 knives. He wouldn't put on the heating so the house felt cold and moldy. He has no curtains, no decorations. His ex took everything not bolted down and he was too cheap to replace it. Just imagine $1 million house like that. I am grateful that I can live in his house. It is something I could never afford myself. But I didn't want to live in squalor. So I bought some kitchen supplies, some furniture, but at some point I realized I was dipping in my savings all the time and he did nothing. I looked into curtains, but those things are expensive. His house has so many windows, it is crazy. I didn't want to pay for this anymore. I told him I needed a fund to furnish his house. He blew up at me that I was just with him for his money. I pointed out all the money I spend on his house. The gifts and the trips because he pays for nothing ever. Because he wants to be sure I am not here for the money. The fact is, if we break up I have nothing, the house is not mine. If I spend all my savings on his house I will be left with absolutely nothing. He wants a prenup and I am fine with that, but I can't help but feel used. Next to that, I am jealous of his ex-wife. I feel like she got treated and I am neglected. He proposed to his ex on a cruise with a $10,000 white gold diamond ring. I got the rhodium-plated Swarovski stuff that might cost like $100. The proposal was at a picnic in the park I organized, paid groceries for and slaved in the kitchen for. I almost said no out of pure disappointment. However, I am afraid to bring it up and to be called a gold digger. I don't want to be funding a millionaire's lifestyle. He loves everything as long as I pay for it. As soon as he has to pay, it is frivolous, unnecessary. I can live like a poor person by myself. At least the fact there are literal millions lying around doesn't hang over me to bum me out and I would just be paying for my own lifestyle. Will I be the a-hole for calling of a wedding purely for financial reasons? Because I love this man, but I imagine our cheap wedding in contrast to his ex's extravaganza. Will our future kids be able to have some luxuries? Or only if I pay for it? What if I ever become a stay-at-home mom? Will I have to beg to put the heating on? Edited to answer questions I see a lot. I know the abuse is not made up. His family and friends told me separate stories of the abuse they witnessed. Not only did it confirm it, it showed me she was way more terrible than I thought. Like stealing heirloom jewelry of his grandma with Alzheimer right after she was widowed, pretending she was gifted these things even though everyone knew grandma hated her guts. I did not realize or see he is doing the same to me as she was to him, and he is subconsciously punishing me for what was done to him. I am not trying to force a lifestyle in him where he was previously happy in. He told me prior to moving in that he left his house like this because he was depressed after his wife took everything, even the curtains, that it makes him sad and he wants a cozy home. He just didn't know where to start. His house is paid off, thanks to granddad. He isn't actually spending much on utilities either. House is very well isolated and has solar panels. It is weird to see how cheap being rich really is. I am not asking for designer furniture. IKEA all the way, and I have refurbished second-hand furniture myself. I am actually pretty thrifty. I see where my jealousy over the her lifestyle might have triggered some people. Let me explain. A $10,000 ring is insane and stupid to me. I do not want that because I would fear for losing it every day. I don't need an over-the-top wedding. However, it almost feels like for her he did effort. Wanted to give her what made her happy. Put effort and thought in it. With me it almost feels like he wants to prove how little he can give me. He talked about how he would see the wedding and it is cheaper than my actually financially struggling cousin's wedding. I can't help but feel he wants to demonstrate how cheap he can treat me. And I already feel embarrassed about the family that would have been to both, and I will feel like the discount wife. I don't like to say it, but it feels like he gets off on it to some extent. We are almost talking washing paper plates at this moment. Yes, I did discuss selling the mansion I really don't need and move to a more modest house. Especially knowing this is the house his ex picked. He doesn't want to do that. He loves this house, but I feel really intimidated living in a house I could never afford anyway. And so many large windows, geez. I haven't talked to him yet, but pause on the marriage and counseling is a must. I already am looking for individual counseling because I realized I might indeed be too much of a people pleaser, allowing him to control me with the ghost of his ex. I also am going to separate for a while. I am looking to rent something for a few months so I can get some space. Thank you all for your insights. Man, I feel for OP. I think the situation speaks for itself. OP's fiancé is still hung up on his divorce, which is understandable, but of course it's unfair on OP. She should not be punished for that which was done by the ex-wife, who sounds like a really horrible person. Individual counseling as well as couples counseling is a definite must if these two hope to make their relationship functional in any way, but since the story has several updates, I don't want to make a judgment as yet, but of course OP wouldn't not be the a-hole for putting the brakes on this wedding, because from where they are currently, it's just a disaster waiting to happen. Let's hear some of the community comments. Senior Day says, not the a-hole. I understand you've had some trauma in your past and I'm sorry you went through that. But I can't allow you to mistreat me because of it. It burns me up inside that you gave her everything, but I have to beg for the bare minimum. I deserve to feel cherished by my partner, as I have cherished you. OP responds with oomph that hit me right in the feels. Moth Girl 7 says, replying to add on to the above statement, I am not with you because of the money you have, and if you can't trust that, then that's something you need to work on. I cannot live without heat, furniture, curtains, and basic decency just to prove to you that I am not a financial abuser like your ex. It feels as if you are projecting that image onto me, and that is unfair. His way of coping is extremely unhealthy. What he should be doing is talking to a therapist about how he can communicate his needs to you, not shutting you out and behaving the complete opposite of how he did with this ex. He should set some healthy boundaries on how he spends his money, sure, but he also needs to acknowledge that you asking for some financial contribution to the house you live in isn't the same as his ex demanding he take her on a cruise. He needs to find some ways he can feel appreciated when he does spend money on things you benefit from, and he needs to trust that he is in full control of his money. You have no desire to take that from him. To add on to Moth Girl 7's point, yes, of course there needs to be healthy ways to spend money. OP, in the post, mentioned that when fiancé spends, he spends on frivolous things, which gives me the impression that he's accustomed to splurging as opposed to paying for necessities. I wish we had clarification on that because it was a passing point, but assuming that's the case, there's a lot more wrong with fiancé than just frugality. He still need to learn what responsible spending is. And now on to our first update. Okay, I hope this update makes sense because I am very confused and not really doing that well at the moment. Well, Reddit, you changed my life. Thank you so much for all your ideas and insights. Honestly, I don't think I would have had the courage to do what I did without you guys. I went to therapy. Took the day off just to get my racing mind to calm down. Therapy has confirmed things you guys suspected. I am a people pleaser. I wanted to save him. And I have internalized the idea that any effort and every penny I want him to spend on me makes me a gold digger. I will have weekly sessions to work on me. I realized I would have never taken this treatment from any of my exes. Even though I made more than them. The idea I had to prove myself worthy to be with a millionaire and not be in there for the money got into my head pretty early. I called one of his siblings I am pretty close with and just told her everything. She was not surprised but just sad about how unhappy he was making me. She told me that from the day we started he had this idea that I was out of his league. He struggled to understand why I wanted to be with him and he probably just thought it must be my money. She told me she already talked to him in the past to treat me better. She was furious about the proposal. This information confused me a little. I was a little hurt she never discussed any of this before, but she thought it was none of her business. She also explained how she and her husband organize their finances. He also doesn't have as much as her. I took the opportunity to pack a bag. I haven't found a place yet, but I am going to stay with my parents. I made up my mind that I will at least want 6 months apart to get myself in order. I made sure my stuff was in the car because honestly I had no idea how the conversation would go. So into the most difficult part. The talk. I waited for him to come home. He was pretty late but I didn't want to sleep another night on this. Pretending I was fine while I was contemplating all this just ate me up. I had written down what I wanted to say. I have never been so scared before. I didn't want to hurt him and I didn't know how he would react. I took some advice from here. I opened that I was moving out and that I wanted to pause our engagement. He was very quiet and just sat down. I told him he really hurt me by calling me a gold digger and that I am done walking on eggshells and feeling guilty for just wanting basic things. I told him I was unhappy and felt neglected. I also told him that after 3 years of me showing up for him he still doesn't think I am here for him. It is not going to happen. He was just quiet. He didn't say anything. I told him that the constant comparing to his ex was unhealthy and unfair. Punishing me for her sins was abusive. I told him comparing her to me all the time has triggered me comparing myself to her and starting to feel like she was worth more than me. One of the things about her was mostly ungratefulness. He would do nice things for her but it was never enough. The thing is, he doesn't do nice things for me and I have to be grateful for the pleasure of picking up the bill. I told him he was not ready for marriage. That I dreaded having kids with him and live like this. That I didn't trust he would take care of me if I would become a stay-at-home mom, and at that point I just called him abusive and a user. I was getting pretty angry saying all this out loud, losing my composure and script a little bit. He remained quiet with almost no emotion on his face. I stayed quiet but nothing came out, so I decided that I would just leave. Only when I got up to go he said, "Please don't go." He asked me if I was pausing the wedding or calling it off. He wanted to know if it was over or if he still had a shot. I told him I wanted out of this house. I honestly don't want to live in his ex's palace of sadness anymore. I needed him to go to therapy, and especially financial therapy. I needed a separation. I told him I was open to couples counseling if he went into individual counseling. He begged me not to do the separation, but honestly I really wanted it. I just told him to think about it and I left him. He was finally showing some emotions. He was crying at this point. He sent me a very long text somewhere in the AM. Told me he was a wreck and couldn't sleep. He made all kinds of promises. He would go into therapy, sell his house, buy a smaller one, and make sure I am taken care of whatever happens. He said he would help me decorate and we will make a home. He again asked me to please come home. But to me it doesn't feel like home there anyway. I feel very empty and tired. I have been sleeping most of the day. I feel guilty but also a little bit relieved, if that makes sense. I don't know if I actually want back if he does all that. I don't know. I am a little unsteady right now. I need some time to process. I will go back for the kitchen supplies and my TV. I won't take anything else of the furniture. This for the exact same reason I was unwilling to buy everything. His house is huge, so the couch is huge. I can't take it. Update 2. Hi everybody. Let me just say I am overwhelmed by the number of people who really care about me and asking for updates. Strangers who care about you is a feeling like no other. Thank you. So as I said, I left. I am looking for an apartment I can afford. My parents are helping out. I am living with them and saving up. I am not closing all doors, but as for now we are broken up. I have no contact. The first week he transferred a large amount to my account. It really rubbed me the wrong way. It just showed me that he still thought that money was what kept me here. I deducted the couch I left and transferred everything else back. I asked for no contact after this. He has been respectful of it and I feel free at the moment. I felt guilty for my needs, for wanting to be taken out every once in a while. The longer I am out, the harder I realize it was abuse. I have an autoimmunity problem and the cold house caused it to flare up. Even after that he kept turning the heat down. He rather have me miserable than pay what? $100 extra in the end of the year. The last thing I heard is that he put the Palace of Sadness on the market. I have seen the ads. So, happy he is going through with that. I heard of his sister that he is in therapy. I am happy for that and I hope he keeps that up. He is keeping his promises so far, but I need to see real change, and even then I really don't know. I am building my own life by myself. Thinking about getting a puppy. If I give him another shot, it has to start all from scratch. I want to start dating again and take it slow. Therapy is really a good idea. I now know I was just bringing this on myself as a people pleaser. Savior. Wanting this man to be happy so bad I forgot about myself. Never again. So that is all there is to say, really. And girl with dragon tattoo says best of luck. Please never forget your worth again, because others will shortchange you if so. OP responds and says true. I allowed this from day one and let him play his fantasy revenge on me. The red flags were there so early. Loving ourselves is the key to a happy life. Summer Flip says my question is, did you previously communicate your feelings before just ending it? Did you wait until you stopped loving him? OP says, I did. Multiple times. I had a few breakdowns where I told him I was unhappy, especially when my autoimmunity disease just kicked into high gear. I told him I was done being cold. Then the discussions started about what is cold and I had to negotiate a temperature setting he was okay with. He would still turn it down behind my back. The curtains were just the last straw for me. He was giddy and happy about all other changes I made to his home with my money. I thought it would not be so weird to ask him to pitch in, right? I had done so much, sacrificed so much, and he still blew up at me. What kind of gold digger pays for everything for 3 years? If I was one, I was really bad at it. So yes, I communicated, over and over, and nothing changed. I am pretty shocked he is actually doing something right now, but honestly I think it is a little too late. I don't want to shut the door completely, but I will never ever be cold in my life ever again. OP has a third and final update and I am moving into that one as well, and it goes as follows. Thank you for everyone reaching out to me. I have closed in on a little apartment for myself. I got a puppy. After being in a home where I was truly loved. My parents, I realized how sad, cold and alone I had been. Over time I went blind for a lot of things. Blind to a comfortable home temperature, comfortable with thinking about every penny spent, feeling guilty for buying that dress I wanted for so long that was finally on sale, feeling entitled for wanting date nights, being treated sometimes. I started to think about what makes me happy. I love to travel, dress up to go to a nice restaurant, throw dinner parties, entertain people, think about Christmas gifts 6 months in advance, have a cozy house, and I realized just how much he had taken from me with that one little sentence. Is that really necessary? Is anything ever? If you have a roof, food, bed and a TV, you are there, right? Is travel necessary? Is having nice clothes necessary? Is a shower necessary? A haircut? A party? A hobby? A wedding? No. I know now that abusers are not per definition bad people. He is broken and he has trauma I have no time or energy for. He got free from abuse and decided to become the abuser. I know he is in therapy and we initially agreed on 6 months no to low contact, but I felt I was certain it was not for me anymore and I didn't want to keep him dangling. Breaking up with him was very hard. It made me very sad. I never wanted to hurt him and I loved this man very deeply. I wanted us to be each other's happy ever after. We both came from dark places and I wanted us to thrive together. His family told me I was the one. I was everything he was looking for and I felt so lucky, but we only have one life and he has so much work to do before he even becomes the bare minimum of what I needed. I feel failed, Like my story has a bad ending. I feel very broken and sad. I will take my time to just be me. I hope he does the same. I truly hope he finds the one and becomes happy. Mostly I hope that for myself, but for now I am enough by myself with the puppy. Thank you all for your time and support. I am going to have a little cry in some fur baby's fluffy fur. There's just one more comment I want to read before giving my final thoughts, and it's from NolaCat94, who says this is so far from a bad ending. A bad ending would have been staying until nothing was left of you. A bad ending would have been him bleeding you dry and you being stuck. You put yourself first and that will always be good. And to add to the positivity, this is probably the kick he needed to get past his trauma. OP responds and says, I think you are spot on. He has said these things himself. He didn't know how bad he was until he came home to me leaving. He has told me he hates himself for letting me walk and letting me be this miserable. He is in therapy, as far as I know, because I am no contact, and I hope he does well. I really felt once I was out how much of myself was lost. I went through quite a dark time realizing how far I went for this man, but I am getting better. I just feel sad for both OP and her ex-fiancé. I don't think there are any a-holes here, just victims of their circumstances. I think OP's fiancé just seems like the typical trust fund baby/millionaire. The fact that a huge portion of his wealth is inherited and/or will be inherited from both his parents and granddad shows me he's only used to showing affection through spending, which was then used against him by his ex-wife. Another reason I think this is because when she finally left, he sends her a huge sum of money into her account. He doesn't have other ways of expressing love, and she spoke about how when he spends on frivolous things instead of understanding basic necessities. He just doesn't seem to have a healthy relationship with money in general, and I would bet that started before even the relationship with the ex-wife. He probably just grew up throwing money at the problem, and since the outcomes last time weren't that great, he resorted to penny pinching. But now he's ruined a good thing, but I think he's on the right path with individual counseling, and even if they don't get back together, which I believe they won't, because let's be honest, 3 years is a long time to put up with this type of behavior. I think the relationship is irreparable, but he's going to come out better for the next woman in his life, and I wish OP the best in her future endeavors. Please like, comment and subscribe. Let me know what are your thoughts on this one, and I'll catch you on the next upload.